I'm Abhinav Kapoor. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Bicky. We are a guest data platform for restaurants. What that means is we aggregate customer data across point of sale, reservations, online ordering, loyalty, pretty much any breadcrumb of guest data, pull it together to map the entire customer journey. And on top of that, we layer in analytics, targeted personalized marketing. So really trying to be the data and marketing engine for restaurants. I met Olga for the first time just a few months ago, and it became really clear to me that while loyalty is a buzzword in our industry right now, there are very few people that understand loyalty as well as Olga does. So Olga, thank you so much for joining us, and I would love for you to just give a quick intro and we'll dive in from there.
Yes, hi everyone. So you probably heard from the previous couple minutes of chatter. So my background is in restaurant marketing. I worked for Yum brands in various marketing and some ops roles, supply chain roles over a number of years. Then moved on to TGI Fridays, mostly international, a little bit of domestic. And then a few years back, I've started this little loyalty consultancy specialized in just helping restaurants with their loyalty programs. And the need is definitely there because more and more restaurant chains and even mom and pops get onto the loyalty bandwagon. But as I'm discovering, a lot of companies do not have the appropriate expertise or resources or and capability within their in-house team to really maximize the use of loyalty. So I work with a number of different loyalty platforms. So we work exclusively with restaurants. We work with 4 or 5 different platforms and open to working with more platforms. Basically, whatever you're on as a client, whatever you're using or thinking of using as your loyalty platform, will work with you. And it's all really about how do you make the most out of the tools that you already have, you're already paying for. And that's what we help brands with.
Yeah, awesome. And I think it's important to set the context for this conversation where, again, loyalty is not something new. Restaurant loyalty has been around for decades. I think I looked it up this morning, the Starbucks app launched in 2008. So this idea of loyalty, app adoption, digital sales has been around for a while with the biggest brands. It obviously became much more of a necessity with the onset of the pandemic, and restaurants, I think across the board, realizing that instead of loyalty being a nice to have, thinking about it as the only or primary viable tool for having a direct relationship with their guests. And I think one of the things I've learned in building Bicky over the past couple of years is a lot of restaurant marketers I speak to think that they take a very if you build it, they will come mentality when it comes to loyalty. And I think what I've realized is there's no kind of silver bullet to building a loyalty program or building guest engagement. I like to think of loyalty as a lot like parenting, right? In the sense that there's no one thing I can do for my kids that'll make them amazing human beings. I have to just show up every single day and do little things consistently over time so that it compounds and hopefully gets them to the point where they are good members of the human race. And so in that context, the goal with this chat is to really learn from you, Olga, and to dive into what are those tactics, what are the nuances of loyalty that restaurant marketers and operators need to know to truly make or start making their loyalty program successful.
Yeah, and I think you're completely right about there's no silver bullet. And I'm being a loyalty expert, loyalty consultant, you would probably expect me to drum up how critically important and absolutely unavoidable loyalty is. Yep. Loyalty program and loyalty communications is just one part of your overall marketing portfolio. Right. So it's not going to replace every single marketing communication that you have. It's incremental. If you're working with it well, if you're optimizing the use of it, you're going to get a very good return on it. If you put it on set it and forget it, if that set it and forget it setting is appropriate for your brand, it matches up how your guests are using your brand, it matches up the types of rewards that they enjoy, it fits in with your online ordering experience. If all of that comes together, your set it and forget it loyalty actually might generate pretty good returns. You need to look at it every few months or so, adjust it, modify it, but it'll still work for you, right? So, and as your brand grows and you grow the number of locations and grow the number of guests in your database, then it starts making sense to become more advanced with your loyalty marketing calendar and start looking at things as less automated segmentation. So, because most platforms provide some basic segmentation that is kind of, it's out of the box, but you still have to configure it and you need to know how to configure it. But it's pretty easy. It's a small project, and I help a lot of brands with those. But then once you move on into multiple hundreds of thousands of guests in your database, then you basically get started. You can get started on more advanced segmentation and more unique segmentation.
Right. So let's there's a lot to unpack there. I want to start with probably the first thing that really like took me by surprise when I first came across your materials. And can everybody see my screen here?
I can.
Can you see the loyalty loop image?
It sounds like yes.
Okay, good. All right, cool. Can you explain, like, I saw this and I think my first reaction was like, WTF? So like, can you explain like what is the loyalty loop and kind of the role that loyalty plays for a brand? Yeah.
Absolutely. So this is a model that helped me shape my thinking about restaurant loyalty. And I did not come up with it. It's a classic McKinsey model developed like 20 years ago or so. But essentially what it talks about is, what does loyalty really mean? And when you start from where you see the trigger down there in gray, so whenever you're making any kind of purchase decision, first there is a trigger that makes you, well, I need to buy a new car. I need to buy a new whatever washing machine. And typically what happens at that point is a number of brands or options pop into your initial consideration set. So here are the things that I'm going to choose from. So your initial consideration set goes from, you think about, well, here are the 5 brands, and then you go to evaluate those 5 or whatever brands, and you decide, well, this one has these features, that one has those features. So I'm going to go with this one, and then you arrive to the moment of purchase. So what loyalty does is allows you to essentially just skip that active evaluation.
Right.
If you have been a faithful Audi owner like I am for a number of years, when it's time to get a new car, I kind of skip to Audi just because I don't really need to evaluate other options.
I get it.
Yep. Yeah. So and
I always get a credit whenever I go to buy a new car. They're like, oh, you're a loyalty.
And that helps too. And then you get to the moment of purchase, and then but every time you make that purchase, whether it's a big purchase or small, after that purchase, there's your post-purchase experience. And in the world of goods and not experiences, you have, is the washer working as expected? Are all the buttons pressing correctly? Did you have to replace it? Is your car running as you expected? Is the cost of service reasonable? So all of that post-purchase experience builds your relationship with the brand. And when it's time to make that purchase decision again, you are, well, I probably should consider other options now, or you're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to get the same thing again, or a variation on the same thing. Right. So when you're in the loyalty loop, that's what happens when you're in the loyalty loop. The interesting thing was the restaurant, and I don't know if you have that next slide down there, or we're just sticking to this one. When you're in the restaurant loyalty, no, I think let's stay on this one. Let's stay on this one. When you're in the restaurant loyalty environment, you're making that purchasing decision at least 3 times a day, right? You're deciding what are you going to eat at least 3, maybe 4 times a day. It's not always a purchase. Sometimes you go check out your fridge, or sometimes you decide, well, is it my fridge, or should I go get something across the street? And the goal of the brand with all of the marketing, including the loyalty program, is to first make it as quickly as possible into the guest's initial consideration set, and then ideally to fall into that loyalty loop. And well, it's lunchtime, I only have 20 minutes. I'm not going to even consider where I'm going to go. I know my answer is, well, in my case here, Chipotle. Yeah, because that's the closest, that's the fastest. Right. So the goal of the loyalty program is to get the customer as close to the loyalty loop as possible, without with an understanding that nobody's ever going to be loyal to just one brand for this particular type of occasion. It's impossible.
So that's a good framework for understanding what the loyalty loop is, right? It's just getting to basically like removing the evaluation piece altogether. Right, but there's a lot.
Trying our best to remove it. Our best to remove it, but you can't always remove it. Yeah.
I'm going to guess that most of the brands you work with don't have anything close like this to set up or aren't even familiar with this is. So even at a tactical level, when you are, let's say, you're called in to fix a loyalty program, or you're a restaurant marketer and you just got a job and the mandate is like, hey, fix loyalty, increase digital sales. Tactically speaking, what are the first 90 days with this knowledge in mind? What do your first 90 days in the job, in the seat actually look like?
Yeah, so I start by looking at the customer experience and then how does that customer experience is reflected on the loyalty platform.
Right.
So to me, when I look at loyalty, it's not just about how is the loyalty program itself set up, but it's also how is the experience with the app or the online ordering, how integrated all of those processes are, how easy it is to use the program, how well the employees in the store understand that the loyalty program is available, how well can they help the customer. So what's the level of visibility of the program, both in terms of acquisition and in terms of engagement and retention. So that's one of the key things. And you can't get to that by just looking at the platform settings, because it's in the reality and platform settings are not exactly the same.
How do you gauge the success of the acquisition versus retention piece? So like you're sitting there and you're looking at the customer experience and you're thinking about, I think everybody's goal is like digital sales is, with loyalty specifically is 5%. And everybody gets these mandates like, we want to be at 20% this, like you look at Wingstop and they're like, we want to be at 100%. And they are one of the few brands that is actually like every single quarter they report it, that number is ticking up. And so like, the goal is obviously acquisition, but then how do you assess acquisition? And then what are you implementing to improve the guest acquisition?
Well, that really depends on the brand. So there is not one answer there, but you start with looking at what does a brand have, what is a brand doing right now, and if the acquisition levels are high, but then the retention, so this funnel from the acquisition to the first transaction to the second transaction to reward redemption, if that funnel is leaking too much, then you're trying to understand what is the reason. Is it a poor app experience? Is it not enough visibility of the program? Does it take way too long to get to the reward, so people don't get a chance to understand that the program is truly valuable? So it really depends on the client and how they are set up, but there's almost always room for improvement. And sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's, well, you're giving people the reward after their first visit and they forget by the second visit that they even had that program. They just don't remember they signed up. So then the answer is, well, get them to use it even for a small reward right away, so that they remember how convenient and easy it is. And sometimes you need to have advanced technological solution because something just does not work quite right, and you got to get like a lot of different vendors involved to get that fixed. More often than not, it's simple moves. Sometimes it's complicated.
What's like a simple move?
The simplest move is usually adjust the welcome journey. A lot of brands are very shy about offering generous enough, but not too generous welcome rewards, and then also about following the customer from their first to the second to the third purchase, because you want them to use your program at least 3 times, and then it sticks in their memory. I'm a member, I have the program. Next time I show up, oh yeah, I should pull out my phone and scan my receipt or scan my phone on the register, and I'll get something from it. So getting that welcome
for like number of times within 30 days. Like, is there like a benchmark for? It's got to be 3 times in 40 days or something like that.
It depends. It's different for a coffee shop and a fine dining restaurant. So it's really dependent on how which brand you're talking about, how much digital penetration they have. So the digital purchases mostly, is it more in store? So there is not the right number. But if it takes them more than 90 days to get to the second purchase, you're probably not doing something right. So
more than 9 days to the second purchase.
To the second, you're definitely not doing something right. Even if you are a fine dining restaurant, that's way too far.
So even the nuances of the type of brand aside, what we're saying here is, at a minimum, your frequency should be twice in 90 days.
Well, I guess so. Again, like if it's something that is super extremely special occasion, maybe that's okay. So it depends on the type of brand, how people are using it, what's normal frequency, what do we expect normal frequency to be. So that's one of those things that you kind of go through with the brand and look at their metrics.
I think that's why this stuff is so fun, because the answer is almost always it depends, and it depends on your brand. It's unique to your brand and your customer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes there are like I say, there is always a very wrong answer, and then there's a number of answers that may be right. So you just want to make sure you don't pick the one that is completely wrong right away. And then if you get one of the right ones, we can adjust from there. So, but the key is not to launch with the really bad start.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And then thinking through guest acquisition, what's the most effective channel? We get caught up a lot when people ask us, because we are born of digital times. I think a lot of people we talk to always think about guest acquisition as a purely, run Facebook ads, do retargeting campaigns, do app download campaigns, that type of stuff, which does work. I think one of the things that surprised me when speaking to you initially was you had a very different take on what success for guest acquisition looks like, or what channels for guest acquisition work. So could you share, I guess, like what you think is the best channel for just acquiring a loyalty program?
Yeah, and I know this is probably not the most popular answer with digital marketers, and I work with a lot of those. But now, what I and this is just a sample here, but what I strongly believe is the best acquisition channel is restaurant location, and then by extension of it is with it's the acquisitions through information on packaging for delivery, as well as capturing guests when they are, in this example, it's an all of it, basically your online ordering, opting in during the online ordering process. Yeah. And the reason for that is when you're spending your money on getting an ad in front of a person, what you really want to do is to drive a transaction. What is most valuable to you at that point is to get that guest to spend their, whatever it is, 12, 15, 30 bucks on making a purchase. And then if that purchase is really good and they have an excellent moment of purchase experience, and then they have a good post-purchase experience, they are more likely to get into the loyalty loop. And there's not that much point to pay somebody to become a loyalty member if they don't want to, right? You don't want to spend too much time and money on it. And that's why I always advocate for in-store acquisition as a primary best channel to get the guests, and packaging as a secondary.
Approach. Yeah, that makes sense. Does in-store acquisition mean you're training your team to ask people to download the app, or putting up signage in-store specifically that's advertising the app?
A combination of those things. Again, depends on the model. Fast casual is one approach, and table service different approach, but essentially you want it to make it as visible as possible that the loyalty program is available and is easy to use for your guests, as you want to make it as simple and as noticeable as possible. And then naturally people that come to visit frequently or intend to visit again are much more likely to sign up for the program, and you don't have to fish them out from a sea of people out there on the internet, many of which may have no interest in your brand whatsoever.
Yeah, and this is, so I'm looking at this, I know this is an obscured slide that you shared with us, but like what does a good CPA target look like then? And I guess if we're talking about primarily in-store, then you got to factor in, are you factoring in like cost of labor, cost of packaging, cost of signage? And the in-store acquisition is practically free, right? There's almost. Yeah, I guess they're already there. That's fair. Yeah, they're already there. No, there is some kind of minor cost to POP, and there's probably some very minor indistinguishable labor cost to ask, are you a loyalty member? But that's another reason I like them. They're free, right? Those members are very affordable. Yeah, it's the most efficient. The most efficient channel. That's the most efficient channel, and they're the best fish. They are. They're literally captive. They're already in your store, right? I would say for the Ola web ordering too. It goes the same. They're already on your website. So if you have a single sign-on experience that automatically bundles them in, then like these two, this 85% of the pie is like literally free acquisition because they're already there. Yep, exactly. Well, all it takes, or online ordering takes a little bit more effort, and there are some strategies you can use between trying to get them to sign into the loyalty program right away, or just get them first on the email marketing list, which is a lower friction process, doesn't require creating a password or an account. And then you put them on a conversion journey, so you convert them from eClub to loyalty after they make a couple purchases. So, and I actually prefer that over trying to directly shove them into the loyalty program on many occasions, or at least give them an option, right? So, but in terms of CPA target, it's really tough. But like the numbers, generally the numbers that I've seen across multiple agencies, the range is really wide, and I've seen it as low as like $5 per person
to as high as 30.
Right.
So I think
Did
it's
you say 13 or 30?
3-0. Yeah.
30. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, once you convert those guests into members, what we need to look at is when they convert to members, doesn't mean they make a transaction, doesn't mean they become a recurring member. So if you, on average, let's say 60% of your signups become convert to the first purchase, well, your CPA just went up by 40%, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Uh,
that's true. Yeah.
so because that was useless.
Is that that's a typical benchmark that you see? 60% of signups?
No, it's 60 is kind of on the low side. But I see like really good ones will lose 20% between sign up and first purchase, like 15-20% will be lost in between. And the ones that are not doing very well can lose up to 60%.
Right.
So average, I'd say like 30% dropping off between sign up and first purchase is fairly common.
Is it common because there's no discount associated with the first purchase, or is it if people just never follow through after they think it's a good idea to download?
It depends. It depends. Again, sometimes there is no reason. Sometimes there is no reason to use the app or the program, and then they forget that they had it in the first place. They'll forget the password. They'll just forget. It's not top of mind, right? It's not compelling enough.
Right.
And unfortunately, that happens more often with the online guest acquisition than the in-store, because in-store, usually you're in-store, you're about to make a transaction. When you download following the ad, you are more likely to not have an immediate need, or you're more likely to get distracted.
Yeah.
So, yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it does. And it's funny, like as we talk about like what's the loop and what's the hook and what keeps people engaged in loyalty, I feel like everybody is coming out with the standard dollars for points. Get 99 points, get $9, $1, 1 point. And it seems there's like a real lack of differentiation, honestly, between a lot of brands and their loyalty programs. And I get it. It's just, you want to launch it, you want to get something out the door. And so you kind of default to like, how much is a point worth and how many points should we give out for how much dollars spent? What are ways in which you're advising the brands you work with to actually differentiate their loyalty platforms beyond that, points for dollars type of mentality?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, the points for dollars, it's boring, but it's important. Right? The majority of the guests, when they sign up for loyalty programs, they sign up because they want to earn points, get benefits, get discounts. And as much as all of us want them to be just loyal because they love the brand, the reality is the majority of the customers are in there. They're in there for the offers.
Totally.
And your job as a marketer is to make sure that you send the right offer to the right person at the right time, so that you increase their average check or increase their frequency, or you move their behavior in the direction that you want, and not just throw a discount at them that is not incremental to your bottom line.
Yep.
So it's extremely, that's the foundation that's extremely important. And if you try to run a program like some brands have run in the past that are predominantly or almost exclusively emotional connection focused, usually those don't work out. So it's that emotional connection, special offer and reward, non-transactional rewards. They're very, very important, but they cannot be front and center.
Yeah.
They are the only piece. Having said that, so types of benefits to the members that I've seen work pretty well, they're usually related to the restaurant experience, but they're not directly transactional. So things like special previews for the members. You run an LTO, you let your members come in and try it out few days out, so you can get their feedback, and they feel special because they get first access to something. You can invite your loyal members to all kinds of special events sponsored by the brand. That's extremely valuable and very, very valued by truly loyal loyal fans. Other things that I've seen work really well is getting those most loyal fans, recognizing them with brand merchandise, or allowing them the first look at brand merchandise.
I think that's what I was getting at, which is just like, how do you just do something that's different other than the structure of, spend a certain amount and get a credit? That
Yeah,
was
and
the main thing that I think that where
and
I was
those
coming from with the fatigue.
those things absolutely help, and it's good to have a strong creative agency on your side that can help you come up with those ideas, share them with the members, and then the loyalty program can help you identify which people deserve it, right? Which people should be going for those, should be sent those items or given those opportunities, and that definitely builds a better connection with those members.
Yeah. And so you mentioned creative agency, and this ties into something you and I were talking about yesterday, which is how many people does it actually take on a marketing team to make loyalty, quote unquote, work?
So it's an interesting one because again, it depends on the size of the brand. Because for absolute minimum, if you have a small brand, a small loyalty program, and it's kind of like in a set it and forget it mode, you don't need anybody full time, but you need somebody on your team looking at the loyalty program and loyalty platform on a regular basis, maybe every couple of weeks. Can you check in, get the reporting, adjust the campaigns, swap out the creative, and the brands, smaller brands, and by smaller I mean somewhere between say like 30, 50 to maybe 200 units are the brands that I do most of my work with, because usually they'll have a small marketing team, 2, 3 people on the marketing team, and they really don't have anybody that is going to dedicate their time to looking at their loyalty platform. For they can't spend 3 business days. Nobody can spend 3 or 4 business days per month just looking at loyalty because there's just so many different priorities. So once you get to the scale of a brand of, I'd say, 800 million billion per year, then you definitely need a dedicated loyalty person, senior
800
manager there.
to a billion
Yeah,
in revenue
I'd say by
sales.
billion, you definitely at that point, and you have a loyalty program that has enough people, and by then you absolutely have to have a full-time loyalty person
Yeah, that blew me away when
on
you told
board.
me that yesterday. I was, I was like, wow, you have to be massive to actually be at the point where you feel like you need somebody focusing on loyalty full time. But then you talked me through some of the other marketing priorities, and it started to make sense. Like in terms of
And
field
yeah,
marketing. Yeah.
and you have to keep in mind that you're even for the brands that are extremely different for different brands, right? Like your beverage brands that may have 50% or 60% of their members in the loyalty program. Absolutely, you're gonna have to have a loyalty person on board way earlier than that. A brand that has 5 or 6% loyalty penetration rate, which is not very good, you want to be at 15 plus.
Yeah.
You really don't need a full-time person just to manage that one section. So it can be part of the responsibility of your digital marketing director or somebody like that. So it's would I like for more brands to have a full-time loyalty person in there? Absolutely, that'd be great. And the whole loyalty industry would grow better. There'll be more creativity in terms of how loyalty programs get deployed and
There
what
would
you
be
can
more
do with
Olgas in
them.
the world.
With
So
more Olgas in the world, I would love for everybody to have a full-time loyalty person, but I know it's not practical because there's loyalty for a typical brand. Loyalty marketing only covers 10, 20% of their transactions. It's not the entire marketing universe.
right. Okay. Okay. And then the one thing we've talked a lot about promotions and discounts and points and tiers. And what's the balance, like from a tactical standpoint, what's the balance between overt offers to keep people engaged versus more brand-based, or I should say non-offer based communication?
Well, that's also always brand dependent, right? As always, but generally, what I recommend is not to have uh, to have no more than 50% of brand or non-offer, like completely non-offer communication. Because if you start sending exclusively branding information to everybody, a lot of people tune out.
Yep.
Of course, you can start doing segmentation, right? You can look at people that open the brand communications and they don't start dropping off without the offers, and you can continue sending them more branding messages. And the ones that just open emails where it says 20% off today, you send them more of what they want because otherwise you'll lose them, right?
Yep.
So if you have a larger or your database is growing, you can definitely start segmenting towards guests that are receptive to brand messaging and guests that are receptive predominantly to offers and discounts, or maybe brands that guests that just look at LTOs, and then there's going to be a lot of people in between.
Yeah.
So, but it really depends. But you can't get away with just, I wouldn't say can't get away. It's hard to get away with just sending branding messages alone.
Yeah.
Oh, and another point, if I can add on that, if you
Yeah.
are running a loyalty program that is predominantly focused on the non-transactional messages, it is also fine, especially if your open rates continue to stay high and your unsubscribe rates continue to remain reasonable. But what is going to be more difficult to prove is that your messaging is actually working, because you're not monitoring redemptions. It becomes harder for you to understand, well, people I messaged, and did these people come in more? Did these people come in less? Was there no difference? And that's where a brand like CDPs like BQ come in, that they can
Yes,
be
I was going to
very,
say, yeah, I know you're setting us up right now.
yeah, I'm setting you up, because that's one, if you have something like that, then it becomes more helpful, because it can prove the value of your non-transactional messaging. And you can do a little plug on what BQ does and how it helps here.
I mean, that's it. That's the whole point of collecting all the guest data, and is just moving beyond tethering ROI calculation to just a promo code, right? And I think like some of the cool things, and this goes along with what you're saying, which is you have the database. Now let's start to understand the database, right? So like one of the kind of custom requests that we've started to run is, okay, I sent out this promo code and I get through my email provider or through my loyalty program, and I can look at overall redemptions, but now tell me who's actually using the promo code. Is it new guests? Is it lapsed guests? Is it frequent guests? Are there different levels of adoption of the promo code based on the tiers? Do new guests respond to a different offer versus frequent guests? And really starting to understand the nuances. And this all goes back to something you said a lot, which is you need a lot of data. You need a lot of scale to actually understand these things, or to make them, I guess, statistically significant or meaningful. But that's the stuff that we love, right? So it's like if the loyalty is the CRM and the engine that's used to send out the emails and the offers and the discounts, then on the CDP side, our focus is on doing all the analytics and attribution, and then, helping with the optimization of campaigns and spend moving forward as well. So thank you for the plug.
Sure.
So we've got about 10 minutes left. So I'm going to pull up a couple audience questions that we got ahead of time that we will run through. And if you're still here, thank you so much for sticking around, and feel free to drop questions in the Q&A section as well. And we'll make every effort to get to them. But the first audience question we got ahead of time that I want to address is, how have you seen generational demographics impact loyalty? So if there's a difference between boomers and millennials and zoomers, like in terms of who's digitally native and their adoption of loyalty more generally. Have you seen?
So it's an interesting one. So I'm a very, very practical person when it comes to demographic information, and a lot of brands collect demographic information on their loyalty guests. I don't find it as valuable for loyalty marketing. And the reason is, so imagine you have a database and it says 40% female, 60% male.
Yep.
And now you're trying to decide, well, how am I going to use this information, right? So these customers are female, these customers are male. Are you going to send pink to this and blue to that? What are you going to do? Are you going to try and decide, well, salads to women and steaks to men? You're not going to do that, right? Especially when you have their purchasing behavior. These people like steaks, and they have maybe a mix of males and females, and those people like salads, and there may be a mix of males and females. You're going to go by product preference. You're going to go by their purchasing behavior. So when you're running a loyalty program and you're running, you have the ability to do product-based segmentation. I would always go with their purchasing behavior over whatever they identify themselves as, because for marketing purposes, it makes a lot more sense. You can take information into account when you do your branding strategy, when you're saying, well, we're generally going to target more towards, skew the brand image towards women, or we're going to skew it more towards 20-year-olds or whatever it is. But from marketing perspective, a 60-year-old may like the same things as a 20-year-old, and I'm just going to go with their preferences.
I think that's where you said, like, the transaction data, actually having their, more so than the demographics, having the specific transaction and engagement data on what offers they're redeeming, what
Yep.
emails are they opening, what are they actually ordering is more helpful than the overall demographics themselves.
Yep.
I feel like
For
the demographics,
loyalty offers, not
what's
for
that?
understanding the brand, for loyalty offers, not
Right,
for understanding the brand
right,
overall, but for loyalty
yes,
specifically, I find it substantially less relevant.
right, got it. Okay. We talked about this a little bit, and I know you're probably going to say the answer is it depends, but how do you communicate? How do you communicate for your particular loyalty program to stand out amongst the others? In what is now, the restaurant field has always been competitive. Now digital, there's apps everywhere for every brand. So how do you make your app stand out, or the values of your program stand out relative to others?
It's a good question. I actually never thought about it that way. I never thought about how am I going to truly differentiate the program. I think what I've personally been always focusing on is how do I take what my client has and make it incrementally better. So I'm obviously stealing ideas from people best in the industry, and every now and then you'll get some emails.
Good artists
About, oh,
copy,
yeah, we
great
want to do
artists
that.
steal. That's fine, So.
Yeah. So, but I never think about it as how are you going to differentiate it, because it is truly brand marketing. It's not so much loyalty marketing. And my goal is to take what you have and make it better and make it more effective.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's hard to differentiate when you are using, unless you have a custom app and a very strong digital agency behind it. It's really hard to create very differentiated offers. It's possible, but it's very difficult because you're limited by technology a lot.
Yeah, and I think you're right too. It comes back to it's less a question of how do you differentiate your loyalty program. It's like how are you differentiating your brand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what are your brand attributes? What do you stand for? Who do you cater to? And then how do you make that stand out more clearly? Like the example I always go back to is, And Pizza has a great app, great digital infrastructure, great internal technology team, but all of their marketing is not here's how our app is different. It's literally here's how our pizza stands apart, and here's how we treat our employees and how that stands apart.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Much more brand conscious and holistic than
Yep.
just looking at the app. One question that just came through the chat is, what is a good cadence for sending an offer through an email list? So I guess, how do you think about offers to, whether it's an email list or a loyalty list? How many offers should you be sending per month? How much?
That's a tough one. So too much is when they start unsubscribing, right? If you start them, if they all start unsubscribing faster than before, then you're sending too much. How many do you send? And I think the question is about an email list. I don't know if that means a loyalty, if that applies to loyalty or just email marketing. Again, yes, it really depends. So I have clients that have very advanced segmentation. So they are segmenting guests both by products and by recency, product preference, recency, frequency. So we are running 300 campaigns per month, but not everybody is getting 300 emails, right?
Sure.
On any given week, we try not to hit anybody with more than 2 promotional emails. Transactional emails, here are your points.
2 promotional
emails. No, we try not to hit them with more than 2. Well, promotional and branding, 2 emails, right? Transactional emails when they come in and confirmation of their orders or confirmation of their points or moving to a new loyalty tier status. So those don't count, right? But from like optional messages, right? Marketing messages. Those I try not to do more than 2 per week for any given segment, and every now and then you'll end up hitting more, which you don't want to do because it's kind of tricky. Throttling as the whole big subject. Correct email throttling is kind of hard to set up. Right. I wish that's another thing. I wish more marketers were thinking about that. Right. Yeah, but again, it depends. Yeah.
I'm gonna. I think if you're okay, we can keep going. We have 2 minutes fully allotted, but maybe we can take a couple more questions. One question that I wanted to ask was, we've talked a lot. We've gotten a lot into tactics and theoretical as well as actionable stuff. If you were to give folks who are watching this right now one piece of tactical advice that you feel like they could implement in a reasonable time frame, say in the next week or so, what would that be? What's sort of like the one thing where it's like, it's not a silver bullet. We said there's no silver bullets, but again, one thing where it can at least make an improvement to how they're thinking about email communication, promotions, or loyalty overall today.
I would say one super simple thing that I would recommend absolutely everybody does is look at your email header and footer and check that it actually works as intended. So when you click on order, it actually takes you to the ordering page that's appropriate for the device that they're opening it in. If you click on download now, it actually the download app, it takes you, if you're on Android, to Android page, if you're on iOS to iOS, and so on.
Is this an actual problem you face for like a 100 location brand that you work with?
It's an actual problem because it happens a lot. Or, people will have an app, and then when you place order now, it will open on the browser and they will not be logged in as members. And I see that happen, I'd say 50% of the time. There's something is not quite right in that respect. Something is not rendering right or not opening right, and not, so that would be number one, like really really small thing to fix. And if you do that, change it not just for your not just for your marketing emails, but also for your program emails, so the ones that send your the confirmations of transactions and things like that. Like make sure it's everywhere and not just in the new emails you're going to send out.
Right.
But super tactical, but
that's great. No, it's good.
I see that a lot.
Yeah. And the last one I'll say is this one came through the chat. Do you have a recommendation for the best white label loyalty program for a small brand? It's called less than 5 units.
Less than 5 units.
Or if not a recommendation for the best, at least like one that you've worked with that works for a very small brand of that size.
Well, I would look, it's kind of interesting because all loyalty platforms, they start with 1 or 2, and then they start moving to like a couple dozen. And the next thing you know, they're only working with the ones that are 50 plus, right? So you got to catch the good ones. So I worked a little bit with SpendGo. I like SpendGo.
Yeah, Ivan is great. Their team is great. Yeah.
Yeah, so Incentivia is another one that comes to mind that is worth looking at. I think Thanks may be an option, but I think they're starting to move towards larger, but they might still accommodate like 5 units or less. So those are the top ones that come to mind for me. Como is another option. I don't know if you're familiar with that platform. Como is not. Yeah, Como is a pretty decent option. So that's probably would be at the top of my list to start with.
Awesome. Well, cool.
Como, C-O-M. Yeah.
Alessandro, you're Italian, so Como. It's an easy one to get. I'm just kidding. Okay, I think that's it. I know you, Olga, yes, exactly. Olga, I think you and me could probably keep going for another hour if we wanted to, but I think sadly we probably have other commitments and we should round it out here. But I want to say, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say to everyone who dialed in, thank you so much for being on this call and listening to us ramble for an hour on our favorite subjects. Very much appreciate it and hope you learned something from this.
Yes. And most importantly, both to the audience and to you, Olga, for your time, for sharing your knowledge, your insights. It's been great getting to know you over the course of this. I'm glad we did this one, and I have a feeling we'll probably end up doing this one again, mostly so that I can get you to plug Bicky and CDPs more. So
well, we need to find some more clients to work on together, and then we'll have more learnings and more sharing.
Exactly. So thank you everybody for dialing in. Have a wonderful afternoon. Stay safe, be well. Thank you, Olga. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Abhinav. Bye.
Take care, everybody. Bye.